they did not show Timothy take it, and I wonder if he did. They strongly implied it in a number of ways, but not totally clear. And I could see them utilizing that later, to be like, we didn't show you, you assumed.
That's a great point. Really great point. Why wouldn't they have shown it? They spent a while, directing us there, and it could be a misdirection. Like him being approached by that woman who took his phone and just saying, "You're going to give that back," and clearly,
exactly.
It seems like he's sheepish. I think you were pointing to that.
Yeah.
So that would be quite the misdirection and quite the surprise. That makes me think it's possible that the shooter at the end could be Timothy, being arrested by Thai police or maybe Gaitok or something like that. And him just being like, all right, you're going to take me down. I'm going to go down shooting.
All right. Episode 4, a lot of exciting things going on. I think we'll just jump right into it with what's probably top of everyone's mind. The Belinda and Gary conflict has really escalated in the most exciting way possible. She trusted her instincts that she did recognize him from somewhere. She looked into Tanya, and a few things stood out to me. One, she had not been aware of Tanya's death, so they parted ways in the sort of awkward way that they did in the past. Tanya gave her that big wad of money, and she was really upset, and that was the last she was aware of Tanya. And then now she has Googled her to find out that Tanya has been linked to a mysterious drowning with 3 other people. And the fascinating thing for me here is we talked about in the last episode, I think, did someone cover this up? Because in the scene where Tanya dies, she has just shot everyone on the boat except for one person who jumps in the water and swims away. And we hypothesized, did this person escape, tell someone, and then they came to clean up the scene? They did not. Greg is wanted, essentially, and hasn't responded to questioning for mysterious deaths. And it was kind of exciting to see that was not neatly covered up, because it makes the story a little bit more exciting that he's on the run, and that was the episode title, Hide or Seek, and they talked about that theme. So Belinda's put the pressure on. Greg ends the episode researching her and looking into her and her son, so we don't really know where that's going to go, but it doesn't seem like it's headed anywhere positive. So what are your thoughts on that first thing before we delve deeper?
Well, first, it was a very juicy episode. That stands out, but a few other things. There's a few other murders on the table here. In this episode, somehow there's 3 possible murders that could take place any moment now. Or in the next day. But
which feels like a classic White Lotus move, because we know that the series ends with a gunfight of some sort, but we don't know who is involved, how, or why it's happening, and they're giving us a few different possible explanations, which is something that they like to do, I think.
That's true. I really like how they're setting that up. Yeah, because I was just I guess it's Greg, but it actually, could be related to Timothy for all we know. I mean, there's a few people that it could be related to. So, I mean, it could be Rick related, certainly, although I don't know if the owner would want to shoot up his hotel. But we just don't know is the point, because there's so much chaos that's forming. To stay on the Belinda topic, my first thought is I was like, Belinda, what are you doing giving the stink eye to a murderer? You don't walk by him and be like, I know what you did, basically with your eyes. That's not a good idea.
Yeah, I had that same reaction. It seemed like she couldn't help herself, because she didn't scowl at him, but she gave him a look that says I see you, I know what you're doing, kind of thing. And that's the exact look that's going to put him on edge and cause him to protect himself. And we know that he's not above killing. He seems like the kind of person, from what we saw in season 2, to have other people do it for him, but he's not above it. So this could be another situation where that is happening. And I think intentionally in episode 1, they show Zion, 1, because his character we haven't seen before. So it's oh, who is this guy? What's going on? And 2, they don't show Belinda. They show him searching for her, so she's in danger potentially, and they keep us in suspense. I think she's going to be okay. I would be really surprised if they killed her off, but you never know. I would also be surprised if Timothy commits suicide, but that really could happen. That's on the table. So it's not what I would expect, but I certainly can't rule it out. We'll get right back to the video, but first we just want to remind you that if you're enjoying the discussion, to please like and subscribe and share your thoughts in the comments below. And also that we do a podcast on the channel called Men Search for Meaning, where we explore and get into all kinds of relatable things about life. So if you want to spend some more time with us, check out some of those videos on the channel as well after this one, and let's get back to it.
Yeah. I find myself most interested in the Timothy storyline, but I don't want to go too quickly away from Belinda if there's other things to say.
Does this have anything to do with your stint in prison for embezzlement and fraud?
Of course. I know exactly what that man is about to go through. There's just something so like the pathos of the man who, I'm sure he's smart and worked hard, but we learned that his grandfather was governor and his dad was super successful. So that he's the fuck up actually created sympathy for him, which is something we talked about in the past in another episode. Is can he be sympathetic? At least to me, I didn't think there was much there. It hadn't been developed yet, but here there certainly was, especially with him thinking about taking his life and actively, taking steps to. But I really feel for him because he must feel like the ultimate fuck up right now, especially someone that is above it all rich, as he and his wife are, and have kind of made their kids a bit like that, at least Saxon, to then be, as he said, poor and not have a house anymore and be a criminal. Yeah. It's like his social status, in his mind at least, has been wiped away in a heartbeat, which is that's the nightmare, I would say, for everybody that has worked very hard to achieve, whether it's a material achievement or anything, that it could get wiped away, even like a athlete with an injury or something. I mean, that just has to be the nightmare. And to see it play out in a show is just I think anxiety provoking. I'm curious how you feel when, does it make you feel really tense watching the Timothy scenes?
Super tense. Yeah, the thing that stood out to me the most was the moment that everything became clear, right? He got his phone back after avoiding it, I think, for a while. And he sees all these messages and he talks to who I presume is his lawyer. And he's like, yeah, man, you're fucked. There's no way around it. You'll be lucky if you just never work in finance again. So your social credit that was a big part of your life is going away, probably losing your home, losing all of your assets or most or all of your money. And those seem to be things that are important to him. And another piece that stood out on the heels of that was thinking, I think a lot of people feel like, well, your family, you can always count on your family, And I think the way that some of these wealthy families are characterized in movies and television is often that they are more shallow and materialistic than the average person, and that maybe you can't count on them to stick with you. Like, Greg's girlfriend, Chloe, I think her name is pretty clearly using him and him using her potentially as well. But, he can't rely on her. If shit hit the fan, it's like he's on his own, So I wonder if Timothy's family would stay by his side. I think Piper would probably be able to. I mean, maybe the kids would be able to, but I don't know if his wife would ultimately stick around. She might, but just hard to say. It's not a given, and I could see that potentially contributing to some of the stress that he's feeling is the uncertainty of how this is going to affect his life as he knows it.
Yeah, that's a very good point. I don't get the sense Victoria would stick around.
Interesting.
Only because she sounds pretty shallow when she is saying anything. Are you okay? Not really checking in. They show intimate moments. They're in bed, about to go to sleep, stuff like that. And, we don't get the full picture. So it could be that there's another layer of depth to their relationship. But when he's not doing well and acting so out of sorts, I would think any partner would see that this man is in terrible pain, and either willfully ignorant or I don't know. It just doesn't make me feel confident that she wouldn't just be like, well, I need security. What about me? I need to find someone else that can, make sure I'm taken care of. So I
especially if he's going to prison, it's a lot easier to leave someone while they're in prison. You're like, you were gone. I needed to take care of myself.
Yeah, that's right. I do picture that. That's just the read I get. But it brings up an interesting contrast, which is with Chelsea. I was very impressed with Chelsea because Rick said something that was very deep and personal to him, that he essentially wanted to, if not avenge the death of his father, explore avenging the death of his father in some way with the man who killed him. And that could be interpreted a lot of different ways. I think if Chelsea was, like I perceive Victoria to be, more transactional, more out for herself, her reaction would be like, well, how could you do that? You're going to ruin our lives. Like you might get yourself in a Thai jail tonight. But that's not what she did. Her very first instinct was like, oh, is this like you killed my father? Now I'm going to avenge you kind of thing. But right after that, she gave him a hug. Like it was very human of her. And it was a bit selfless, I thought.
I mean, she would have to be committed to have even made it to this point, because he's pretty insufferable to be around. And it's not like he's spoiling her left and right. She seems to be genuinely, like she said, we're soulmates or something like that, which I don't think is a common thing to hear if you're in a very transactional relationship. So yeah, she's indicated how she feels in the past. And I think this confirmed that, or this added a little bit more evidence that she really does feel some sort of strong bond with him and simply just wants him to open up to her. That's what she desires most, not, money from him or something else like that. That was a nice thing to see amongst all of the other vapid relationships and people, like on the boat. There's just all these wealthy people, like they said, trying to date women half their age, and there's not a strong bond there. The women are trying to just get married so they can get some potential money in a divorce, and everyone seems happy enough in the short term, but it's not really a very close or fulfilling bond in the long term. So yeah, it really did make that moment between Rick and Chelsea stand out, because their immediate context was all these other empty relationships that don't even have anything close to what was displayed in theirs. And it also confirmed, additionally, that Rick's father has been killed. He's not searching for his father as I thought he might have been. His father was killed by this person, and he's there to try and confront him, do something about it.
Yeah. By the way, when I heard what he's really searching for, I did give you credit for your prediction, even though you thought maybe like that was actually his father, the Sritala's husband. It turns out that he's the murderer of his father. Yeah. Still, like, you could see that association. So I did give you some credit. You've been good with predictions.
Appreciate that.
Tell me if this felt obvious to you or not. I couldn't tell if this was obvious or just something I thought of. When Piper was confiding in Lochlan that she wants to stay in Thailand to be a part of the I guess like the what
monastery.
Monastery, yeah. I had an immediate thought that like her dad should stay with her because he's on the run from the government. And it's perfect. And it actually could be much needed change. Like, instead of him being like, are you out of your mind? You need to get to college and get into investment banking. He actually is really in a position, if he doesn't kill himself, to be like, great. I'm so happy to hear that. You follow your dreams, honey, and I will be right there with you. And you know what? Let's just meditate together. Let's just be together. Because
he's like, I think I want to be a monk. It's the time in my life to be a monk.
Yeah, it's true. Because basically, if he ever steps foot in the United States again, he'll be imprisoned. So if he has any assets that are unfrozen, then he'd be able to do that. I guess if he has absolutely no money, he'd have a little trouble. But I think Piper could join the monastery with absolutely no money and should be fine.
Yeah, that seems to be the life that she wants, as sort of a rejection of the way that her family currently does things. Yeah, I also got the impression that he might be open to staying there. It doesn't seem like something he would be capable of long term because it's so different from the life he's used to of like being from this particular family and having this status. It would probably be the best thing to happen to him if he stayed there because it would force him to reconcile with a lot of things that he's had the position to be able to ignore. And now he can't. But I also wonder, is this even possible? Does Thailand have extradition laws or something where they would just allow him to be captured and sent back? Because it's probably known exactly where he is at this moment. You know, the FBI probably knows exactly where he is. I wonder if he would even be able to stay there, and then what would happen to his family who didn't want to stay there. You know, it's like I guess Saxon's Lochlan is the only one who's headed to college. I think I got the impression that no, Piper's working on her thesis. I forget where she is in school, but you know, the money for that is going to dry up, which they've been counting on. So it doesn't seem like he has the opportunity to just hide out and run away because of all the family connections that are present and people that are kind of actively depending on him to provide. But I think you can see the temptation in his eye because his whole MO in the situation is like avoidance, get out of it, you know? And so that brings the gun in. You know, a gun is a very powerful symbolic object in movies and television, and you know the gun has now entered the series here, or a new gun has entered, and they didn't show him take it. It's strongly implied that he took it, but I tend to think in shows when they don't explicitly show something happening, it's because they want you to wonder, and it makes me consider if there is some alternative plot going on where it's not a stretch as a viewer to go, okay, he's depressed, he can't go to jail, he can't handle the situation that's happening, so what's he going to do? Well, he can't stay in Thailand, he's going to take the easy way out. It's him that took the gun, you know. But it could have been somebody else, you know. I think there are other plots at work here outside of Gary, Greg, and Timothy, things that might not be clear to us as the viewer yet. And it's possible the gun is factoring into one of those. Like, it's possible, I guess not based on the timing. I was thinking, you know, it's possible that Rick could have walked past that security checkpoint area and he could have been like, hey, yeah, I'll take the gun. But he has to get on the plane, and I think he had left at that point. But that is to say, they did not show Timothy take it. And I wonder if he did. They strongly implied it in a number of ways, but not totally clear. And I could see them utilizing that later, you know, to be like, we didn't show you, you assumed.
That's a great point. Really great point. Why wouldn't they have shown it? They spent a while, you know, directing us there, and it could be a misdirection, you know, like him being approached by that woman who took his phone and just saying, you're going to give that back? And like, you know,
yeah,
clearly
exactly.
It seems like he's sheepish. I think you were pointing to that.
Yeah.
So that would be quite the misdirection and quite the surprise, but possible.
Yeah.
But you mentioning extradition, by the way, also another really good point. I think it is true that Thailand would just arrest him if he was wanted in the United States. I had forgotten about that, but it seems like Thailand, you know, would have good diplomacy with the United States, and any country with good diplomacy would have extradition, you know, agreements. So, you know, that makes me think it's possible that the shooter at the end could be Timothy, you know, being arrested by Thai police, or maybe Gaitok or something like that, and him just being like, all right, you're going to take me down, and I'm going to go down shooting. Probably not, but, you know, that is now one possibility, since he could have a gun, and it's been implied he has a gun.
Yeah. One subtle detail that I think is certainly not a part of it, but I can't help but comment on, is that appeared to be a 22 caliber handgun, which is a very small caliber handgun, and based on the shots we heard in the first episode, I would say those were all larger caliber, you know, rifle or perhaps pistol. But I think that's a detail they don't actively work into the show because, you know, they're like, oh, no one's gonna know. You know, they often gloss over stuff like that. You know, but if it were truly a mystery, I would say that could factor in, because we would hear something different if that were the gun in use. That probably won't factor in.
Wow, I'm impressed with your knowledge of gun reports. That's awesome. I would hold them to the standard of having the correct sounding gun, because it did strike me that that's a pretty small, it's a gun. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, who knows what will happen there, but
yeah,
I would give them serious credit if they did factor that in, because I like when they are like trying to make it as realistic as possible. We've all seen those kind of movies where it's like, this is so ridiculous, this could never happen, and they just gloss over these huge details because they just assume most people won't care. But I love when there's a strong commitment to reality there. So we'll see. That's a more minor thing. So what else? Where do you want to go next?
I like to talk about Gaitok and Mook. I enjoy talking about them. It's not like the most exciting things happen, but I mean, he did lose the gun. Basically, he Gaitok really fucked up, because it seemed like he was sort of on the verge of being fired. Like he had just gotten strike one, I would say.
Totally.
Serious strike one. Maybe there's 2 strikes. Maybe there's 3. And then he lost the gun, and we'll see if there's 2 or 3 strikes based on that. But his fortunes have really turned since the robbery, and his bravery in Mook's eyes, where she is now actively interested in him. And the fact that she came over when she was dressed up in her outfit and she was all radiant looking, and he got to be, the one that received her in that moment. I was like feeling really happy for him. He's like, this is the best thing that's ever happened to him, at least in my conception. And I'm like, oh, you have something really good happening right now. And yet he has something bad happening at the same time, which I just a little bummed about that, because I want to protect him, because he really is an innocent character.
Yeah. I always read her as interested from the get-go, but sort of in that way where it could turn into something it could not, depending on how each person decides to act. But it's like the groundwork was laid in a sense, probably just because of all the stuff they have in common and being from a similar place. And they both have the personalities of very innocent kind of people. So yeah, I've always read her as interested, but I would agree with you that things are moving in a positive direction. She's kind of getting a little bit more comfortable, having, confiding little things in him, not big things. So yeah, it's unfortunate to see that his infatuation with her is leading him to make big errors in his job, because he does seem to be in a position where he could get fired. I think they laid it on pretty heavy that it seemed like things were going that way. He kind of got bailed out, and then they revealed to him what the meeting was actually about. But he did get a warning in a sense. They're like, you need to step it up and improve your performance here. So, one question I want to ask you: do you think Mook is a totally trustworthy character? Do you think it's possible she's up to anything at all, or do you read her as like perfectly wholesome?
Perfectly wholesome. I don't think we've seen evidence that she's anything but. I mean, that would be quite the curveball if she was actually a plant to, she stole that gun in order to test him or frame him and get him fired because she's actually like, dating Sritala or something like that. Like, I don't know. You're really like, you're confusing my conception of these characters. I think she's innocent. I also want to state for the record that I don't feel the same way as you do about her always being interested. I really think that there was a change when he demonstrated more like traditional masculinity or protectiveness or bravery. Like I believe that, but it's just, I think different interpretations.
Yeah, I do totally agree there was a change. It's just that I always, like, in the first episode, it might have even been the first scene where he gives her a ride,
Mm-hmm.
He asks for a kiss or something like that, and she wasn't like, ew, dude, like, that's so weird. She laughed about it. So there was a level of comfort between them already that generally would be needed for the groundwork of some kind of relationship to evolve, And when he confessed his feelings for her, she wasn't like, okay, like she did kind of do that, but she said, oh, we haven't even been on a date, like, which to me does express some kind of interest. So I always picked up on a little something there, but I agree that it's definitely deepened as events have transpired.
Yeah, interesting. I just thought of something else that it could have been, like, I was thinking this the whole time, like, was this the missing gun? Was it a test? Because if I was that other security guard who introduced the gun to him, I might, kind of poke around. And if he left the gun out, I might just swipe it and just see what he does, just to mess with him. So I want to put that on the table as a possibility, because I really like your theory that there was a misdirection because they never actually showed Timothy with a gun. They didn't show his pocket having a gun in it. Like, I was looking at his pocket and I was like, I can't say for certain there's a gun in there.
Yeah, and he doesn't seem like the kind of guy that would put a gun in his waistband right away. He seems like like he wouldn't know quite what to do with it and would just put it in his pocket or something, and that it would be more obvious. So I really think that's going to happen, but I can't say for certain. So yeah, that's what's going on with that family. I guess amongst the kids, there was a little minor betrayal with Lochlan and Piper, where she was like, "Hey, I'm going to do this big thing. They're going to freak out. I need your support." And he was like, "All right," and then he bails to hang out with Saxon and go to the full moon party, which he seems to be having fun with, which is good to see. He's not sure of himself in a lot of ways, but he seemed to be enjoying doing magic tricks for people and going to this party and drinking a little bit. So it does seem like probably a good thing for him to go out and spend some time out like that. But there was that minor moment where he committed to something and then did let her down.
True. Yeah, I guess I saw it as well, that's the little brother and he's going to act in his interests and he's not always going to do what the sister wants. So I didn't, I wasn't too moved in one direction or another by that. But actually, one thing I found kind of interesting, because it made me just start thinking about my perception of Piper, is that Saxon called her a gender goblin and stuff, and really acted as if she was different than I perceive her to be. I perceive her to be a thoughtful, kind of soul searching person who's got a good heart. I don't see anything, like, she hasn't been belligerent or talking about social issues related to gender in any sort of politically explosive way. She's really done nothing but been almost a timeless, good-hearted character from what I can tell. So the fact that he was putting her in the camp of, something like, there is a stereotype for, that what he was saying, and she doesn't fit it at all. I was a bit confused by that.
Yeah, my take on that is just they're showing how dumb he is, or just like how much he's unable to understand people that are different than him. Because I think that happens all the time, and I see it happening on the internet where someone reads a comment from someone else expressing an opinion that they don't agree with, and they immediately characterize that person as what they imagine them to be. And I've been on the receiving end of that, and it's like, oh, you couldn't be more inaccurate with the portrayal that you're attempting to make here of me. So I think they're showing that he's just not able to understand her, and when he tries to characterize her, he's just far off base, because he's not able to see her as she is. So I took that as more of his blindness than anything to do with her identity in any part. He's just like, oh, you're weird, you're not out there trying to have a bunch of sex and do things the way that he would expect her to do them, and therefore he can't understand her and he mischaracterizes her.
Yeah, that sounds accurate to me. Like, he'd be the type of guy that if in a, I don't know, honest moment, she were to say something like, well, girls are attractive too. Like, I can look at a girl and see that she's attractive. He would be like, okay, so you're gay, so he just is wildly saying things that are just, huge generalizations. That's the way you're interpreting it. I think I agree. Yeah.
Yeah. And another piece that just stood out to me that didn't stand out before is, you mentioned there is a growth opportunity that appears to be arriving for Saxon in how he responds to. I think it's safe to say that Lochlan is questioning his sexuality. Perhaps he's gay, or I feel hesitant to make that assumption, but it really feels like they're hinting at that. So you had mentioned, oh, how is Saxon going to respond to that? Will he be understanding because this is his brother, or will he, not be able to understand him. And based on the interactions we've seen of him with Piper, I think he's not going to understand him. I think he's going to be like, oh, dude, that's gross. That's so weird. Why would you do that? Because he has an opportunity with his sister, who he's closer to in age, to understand aspects of her. And instead, he just kind of mocks her and others her and, characterizes her in inaccurate ways. So I wonder if they're trying to show us in a small way, how does he respond to his siblings being different than he would like them to be or different than he would expect them to be? And it's not well.
Yeah, true. I do think that it's a little different because they're both men. I think in his eyes, there's something about your brother. Like, he is a very clear conception of what a man is supposed to be. Obviously, a very stereotypical one. And to hear that his brother is not that conception, but he lives in the modern world, so he understands it's an option that someone could be gay. It'll be interesting to see if he, goes in a really like horrifying direction of like, hey, you need to get that shit out of you right now. I want you to take a cold shower and then be straight after, if he does something like that, which is like, okay, you haven't evolved at all. Or if he's like, shit, well, that explains blah, 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 blah. And all right, I hope that for him. He could still be crass, but maybe he has the side of him that's not going to disown or even just strongly distance himself from someone he loves so much as his own brother, because of his brother's sexual orientation. We'll see.
I'll put my prediction out there based on my experience with the White Lotus universe, their way of doing characters, all the things they portrayed. I think I don't think he has a redemption arc. I think Saxon is one of those too far gone characters that's just there to kind of show this archetype that does exist out there in the world. And I think I don't think he's gonna have it in him, because I don't see any redeeming qualities about him. I think he's just the epitome of like the unlikable, what many people would call toxically masculine kind of person. So that's my expectation and prediction, is that he won't have it in him. I would definitely like to see that for him, because I would like to see everyone have a redemption arc. I think that would be a much happier ending, but I don't think that will happen for him, because it's something that doesn't happen for other characters in the White Lotus universe.
Yeah.
So any other big things that we didn't touch on? We got. Oh, I guess let's check in on Laurie and Jaclyn. So a weird situation there. Valentin has appeared to be interested in them in some way, though he also seems like a false person who would kind of fake that for his own financial gain or for his own reasons, basically. He told them all their test results were good when that wasn't necessarily true. And then he sends them to a pool area with all like elderly people. And I can't understand why he would do that. Was it an honest mistake? Was he attempting to make a judgment on them or make them feel bad? Is he negging them, perhaps?
Right. I actually took it as this new word that you've taught me, negging, because he does seem like he's capable of doing a sophisticated flirt, or whatever you would call it, like flirting ritual, like a really complex one where you make a girl feel bad about themselves in order to take advantage of that. That's the best thing I can think of. But I'm just really struck by Jaclyn's turn. Like, we're seeing the worst of her. We've seen some negative stuff, like when she was kind of semi-viciously gossiping. But that falls within normal, I'd say, although maybe a little too strong. But we're seeing the side of her where she's feeling abandoned by her boyfriend, who might be out cheating on her, is sort of the implication, because he's not getting back to her. And she's just kind of like, I don't belong here. Like, what the hell? Like, whenever she, like at the elderly place, and her friends are like, what? I don't know. We're just hanging out. Like, you're the one that dragged us here and says we can't do yoga. We have to have fun. And she's kind of like in this crisis that's like, do you know who I am? I am, a really sexually formidable woman, and I am not going to be treated as anything but. Like, I will go down swinging. And it's just not a good look. She hasn't shown acceptance of the fact that whatever, things happen. She's here with her friends. She doesn't need to have some crazy wild fling. And it's just, it's not a good light for her, at least in my eyes. I've lost sympathy for her this episode.
Yeah, it has not made her look good, and she doesn't really have any humility. And I think the water gun fight in the street was a fantastic context to put her in, because anyone visiting might be like, oh, this is a bit uncomfortable, or you're just like, wow, this is so fun. We're on vacation, and like, what energy, like we would never experience something like this, in California or in LA or something. So I could see that being very fun, but they're very uptight about it, which I was honestly surprised by, but it did characterize them well in a sense, at the same time where they're like, these children are running amok and they're out of control, and yeah, they seem very uptight. And what a weird ending for that part of their day, to just kind of be set up with random friends of his, and that's who they're going to spend their time with, and that's what they're excited about. That to me was like, oh god, how awkward would that be for like a hotel employee to call his friends and that's who you hang out with.
Yeah, I actually thought that he did a good job, getting those friends, because Jaclyn was pretty much asking to get wasted and have a good time with a bunch of interesting, hopefully handsome strangers. I'm pretty sure that's what she was gunning for. And he, I think, is delivering at least one flavor of what she was asking for. So I actually thought it was not a crazy thing that he did. It's more her that's out of control at this point. And I'm a little worried about her friends, especially not Kate, Laurie. Does Laurie actually want to get that crazy? I don't know that Kate does either, because she's a church-going woman.
Married woman.
Right. So, Jaclyn is kind of like, hey, I'm going to kind of go down because I'm feeling insecure about my relationship right now. And you guys are all coming with me. And what happens in Thailand stays in Thailand, which, could come with some really, terrible guilt for her friends, depending, well, at least for Kate, who's married. So,
yeah, I think my take is primarily that I don't trust Valentin at all. I think he's either just at the tame end, just kind of a bad person, or at the extreme end, up to something and kind of a conniving type character. So I think that's where my judgments of his decisions are coming from, because ultimately I'm like, I don't trust him, and I'm like, I don't trust his friends as well. And these women don't seem particularly aware. It's kind of Jaclyn that's calling all the shots at this point. And she is completely unaware. She seems like she would thrust herself into a terrible situation in this moment, because she's really overwhelmed with feeling insecure and, with her relationship, potentially with getting older, with the closeness of her friends, all sorts of things at the same time. So I think it's a recipe for disaster is my prediction of where their night leads them. Because I think it's possible that they don't show anything of their night, and it's just like, oh yeah, they had fun, and that's that. But I expect that we're going to see someone goes missing or something like that. They can't find one of their friends, whether it be Jaclyn or something like that. I think some chaos is going to result from this full moon party, because it's not like they just went out to a normal bar. Like, this is like an infrequent big mega party, and I think in the same way White Lotus ramps up their intensity, that something bad is going to happen. At least maybe the appearance of something bad that turns out okay. But I think this night will be eventful in a bad way.
Yeah, I think so too. And I have a prediction that at the end of what happens in the night, Jaclyn will walk away kind of scot-free at the end of the day, where she'll just go back to her life of being a celebrity, and it'll be like, wow, that was rough. And she'll have to just contextualize that and integrate it into her life and move on, that whatever crap happened, whether it's like Kate, breaking up her relationship with her husband, or something bad happening to Laurie, or whatever it may happen. But someone like Laurie would actually, end up really like injured from it. But Jaclyn will get away scot-free, because I've noticed that White Lotus likes to act out the theme of, really unfeeling rich people, and the fact that they just get away with stuff, and there's they don't feel the consequences. There's tremendous unhappiness among rich people, but I'm sort of in the White Lotus shows. But I can just picture that happening. It may not play exactly like that, but I'll just put that prediction out there.
Yeah, I like that. I think that is a clever observation, and it does factor in themes that we have observed over the past 2 seasons of people just being like, oh, well, that was a close call, but I'm totally fine. And someone else is paying the price. Yeah, that'll be interesting to see. Any other things you want to touch on?
No, I think we covered it.
All right. Well, thanks everyone for watching. Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. In addition, hit that like button and subscribe if you want to see more. We really appreciate the support, and it goes a long way to helping a smaller channel like ours. You're telling YouTube that it's worth suggesting us to other people, so that'll go a long ways. So thank you guys for the support, and we look forward to reading your comments below. And as we mentioned earlier, we have a podcast on this channel called Men's Search for Meaning, where we talk about and laugh about all kinds of relatable things about life. So if you want to spend some more time with us, check those out as well. We'll see you in the next video.